You're listening to the Original Gamer podcast. I am the Original Gamer OG from original-gamer.com. With me today, I have a special guest. It's Jim Sterling from Destructoid.com. Jim Sterling, it's great to have you on the show, man, and I want to thank you for spending time with us.
Not a problem. It's a pleasure to be here and chat to you today.
Yes, for those who don't know, I met Jim Sterling back at SGC when he was there to cover the Jack Thompson debate. When I saw you there, I was like, when I talked to you for just a little bit, I'm like, there's English people in Mississippi. That was the only thing I could think of.
The funny thing about moving to Mississippi from London is the fact that, I moved to get married because my wife obviously lives in Mississippi. But that made the immigration process very easy because if you're going to do a green card marriage, you're not going to go from England to Mississippi. Mm-hmm. So they look at me, they say, well, this guy's moving to Mississippi. That must be a genuine relationship because nobody's going to fake that. Yeah. So it's made it quite easy. I don't know if I'll ever move, but it's nice here. It's actually a lot better here than people assume it is, especially from someone who lived in southeast London where a girl on the same street as me had her face set on fire by another girl who thought she kissed her boyfriend. And you don't get that out here in Mississippi.
Well, not anymore, especially if you're not black. Granted,
they've...
That's died down a little bit, but 50 years ago, and if you're black, that's probably happened a couple times.
Yeah, well, that still happens if you drive into Jackson, but if you're outside of the main city, you're okay.
But I always thought that was interesting, and when I first met you, I was like, okay, I know a little bit about Destructoid.com, but of course I became a regular visitor after that. I saw your videos, and I saw the rest of the site, and then. Yeah, I saw all the hate. I saw all the commotion that happened. And what I really want to get started with, let's talk about your background before we get into all the commotion and all the feathers you ruffle. What with Destructoid? When I looked you up, it said you were doing freelancing with IGN, and then you had this other side. It was Morphine New Function.
Morphination.
Morphination.com. I can't write properly. Morphination.com. So, what were you doing before Destructoid?
I first started writing for a site called Oratory Opinions, which was a spin-off of a pro wrestling site, but it wasn't wrestling material. It was they tried to branch out and do a different site, which was just general opinion. Just sort of the kind of columns you'd see in a newspaper of someone just waxing lyrical about society or media or whatever. I used to run that for a while before I got bored. Either I got bored or I decided it was time to actually try and find some real work. It was one of those, but I didn't find any real work. I just spent all my time being even more bored because I had nothing to write for. Mm-hmm. So I fell in with a site called Project Wonderboy, which... It was a very casual video game site. And when I say casual, I don't mean they dealt with casual games. I meant nobody bothered writing for it. Yeah. So I was pretty much the only writer there for a while, just doing video game reviews of anything. Even if the game was 10 years old, you play it and write a review just to practice and have fun. That site went down. You'll notice I have a habit of going to sites that are end up going defunct, and I can only assume that's my fault. But so Origin Opinions went defunct, Project Wonderboy went defunct. I started running my own site, which I found out I couldn't do because I'm not a businessman, Morphine Nation, which dealt in satire predominantly. It was social satire, and we had a regular comic series called... I can't even remember the name of the things I've done, but it was about Skeletor. Skeletor that's it, and it was every week or whenever I could think up one, it was just Skeletor being an arsehole to his friends, which was quite popular but didn't really get me anywhere. And then I decided, I'd been writing for about 5 years just as a hobby, and then I thought, well, I could actually probably try and make some money out of this. So I had a look at what I know, which was video games, and just put the two together, writing and video games, and try and make a job out of it, which for some reason in all those 5 years had never occurred to me. So I started emailing a bunch of guys, emailed IGN, who for some reason got back to me. I don't even know why, because I don't even think they saw any of my sample work yet. But Dave Clayman, who used to run IGN Insider, wanted to have a word with me about a commission, and so I did my first professional article on an old Data East game called Tattoo Assassins, which
It's pretty bad, as you put.
Yeah, very famously bad. But I happen to very luckily know someone who worked on the development team for it, and he was kind enough to, anonymously of course, because he didn't want his actual name attached to Tattoo Assassins, he anonymously gave me some insight on the game's development and everything, and so I gave that to IGN, and they published it for me, and then shortly after I caught the attention of Destructoid, and that's where I ended up.
And with Destructoid, when I look back, because I was looked at your blogs at Destructoid, and I saw that you, at first it was kind of like, it was like any sort of, I'm sure Destructoid wasn't doing as well as it was back in 2007 as it is now. So you were having some side jobs, another job, call center job, different jobs here and there. How long did it take for it to get Destructoid big enough where you kind of didn't have to do anything else but just write about games?
Well, the thing about Destructoid is it's always been independent.
Right.
That's something we're fiercely proud of. We've never been bought out by another company, and we never will. It's basically, our one guy, Yanye, who was in Miami, now in San Francisco. We recently moved. So yeah, I was working for him for about a year, I want to say. Working just with it as an ancillary thing. It wasn't a career at the time, and I was working in a cab office for a while, not as a driver, as someone who you just got screamed down the phone by drunken people who didn't know where their cab was. Yeah, which was a pretty soul-destroying job. I do recommend to anybody who feels like their life is terrible to just spend an hour in a cab office on a Friday night in London, and things won't seem so bad anymore. But it was about at the beginning of last year, about January 2009, when I'd very recently moved to the States, and I was just speaking with Nero and my editor-in-chief Nick Chester, and we just sort of hammered out a deal, and now I'm able to do this full-time, which is the most ridiculous job in the world. Just sort of being paid to tell people what I think about video games. It's a stupid job, really, but I'm very, very glad I have it.
When it comes to reviewing video games, that itself, yeah, it is funny that people can get paid for it, but you do provide a lot of other. The articles that you write, both funny, both real. When did you write an article that really caused a commotion, that really just started, everybody sort of said, okay, this Jim Sterling guy is kind of, because was it the You're Mr. Gay with the Super Mario Galaxy, or was it something else that really just, you were like, holy fuck, what did I say?
One of those oh fuck, what did I say moments seems to occur once a month, and it seems to be getting worse. It's like when the space between lightning strikes gets shorter and shorter. Yeah. That seems to be my career now. Like, shorter and shorter until eventually there's just going to be some big explosion and I can never get another job again. I can't really point to a moment when it first happened. Within months of working for Destructoid, I'd been accused of anti-Sony bias, which is hilarious because my only real problem with Sony was always that I wanted Sony to be as good as I remembered it so I could love it, which isn't really hatred when you think about it. So I'd always got that reputation, and then I got a reputation for anti-Microsoft bias at the same time. And then shortly after, anti-Nintendo bias. So eventually it got to the point where different trolls were accusing me of hating different companies. And yeah, so basically, depending on who you ask, I hate everyone and everything. Which isn't true. I've got a lot of love. I just don't show it a lot because I don't see the need to. If you're in an industry where a lot of bullshit happens, you have to be able to call that out and say, this isn't right, because otherwise no one's ever going to learn and change. And I'm not so arrogant as to think I could make any company change. I can't stop Activision releasing 10 Guitar Hero games a year, but it doesn't hurt to at least try and at least get on a soapbox if you've got a soapbox. I mean, anybody with a forum to vent and say what they want about a certain subject will do so. And I'm just very lucky to have as wide a forum as I have.
And I've always been the sentiment that it's, yeah, the industry I think is probably as great as it ever was, because I was back in the day where, on the Nintendo and Super Nintendo, you had to wait months for a good game to come out. Now you kind of have to wait a week or two. So I always said it's better, but of course there's still shittiness going on. There's the Activision thing that's going on now. There's the whole regarding the hardware failures itself. I mean, I love the 360, I love the PS3, but they're shitty hardware. They break down so much. It's unfathomable that after so many years the technology's gotten so better, but we can't keep a system working in the same amount of time that we had NESs working. It's crazy like that. And
yeah, well, I mean, that's basically because of everything that these systems do now.
Yeah.
I mean, back in the day, an NES or a SNES or even a PlayStation, really, you put in a game and that's it. In goes the game works. You don't have to mess around with anything else. But now, we've got wireless internet access, we've got browsers thrown in, Facebook connectivity, achievements, trophies, IDs, downloadable games. These systems do so much now. And the more you give something to do, the more potential there is to go wrong. And I think that's just what it is that they do so much, but that also means that so much more goes wrong. And sometimes it's not their fault, but sometimes it is. I mean, obviously the whole Red Ring of Death thing is purely Microsoft's lackadaisical attitude towards making the hardware, which is a shame. But, I mean, there's loads to complain about, but there's also plenty to be positive about, as you say. We get a brilliant game at least once a month and something interesting every other week.
Yeah.
And people do accuse me of being negative all the time, but if you actually go back and look at Destructoid's history of posts, you'll see that I'm a very positive person and very hopeful, and I spend a lot of my time looking for games that nobody's talking about that look great and just try and talk about them.
Now, the big thing that after SGC, when I started looking at your stuff on a regular basis, the big thing that I thought was kind of, just blew up in different ways you want to say it, was the Assassin's Creed 2 review, where you gave it a 4.5. How, when you were doing that review and you were putting that last score in, did you say, "Oh shit, this is gonna come back and this is gonna hurt"? Yeah, I mean, did you just say, "Yeah, you gotta say it, and you can't really worry about anybody else"? I mean, what were you thinking about it when you were just finishing up?
Yeah, I mean, the way I write reviews might be a bit different from the way other people do it. It's something I try and encourage with my colleagues on Destructoid, because obviously I work as a reviews editor, so it's my job to try and get us on the same page. What I always tell everyone on my staff, and what I always tell myself, is write the review first, and don't think about a number until you've finished writing the review. We've got a 10-point scale, and we always try and use all 10 points. Every single number has a particular summary next to it. So we've got 10, flawless victory, as close to perfect as possible, right down to 1, where there is absolutely nothing redeeming whatsoever. So every single number has a specific meaning. What I then do is I'll write the review, I'll read through the review, and then I'll match up the tone of the review with the tone reflected in the score. So I wrote the Assassin's Creed 2 review out, was as honest as I could possibly be, aired all my grievances and everything, read through it, lined it up with my scores, and was like, I've written a 4.5 review. It's mostly mediocre, which would be a 5, but then there were all these horrible poor points dragging it down, so it landed in the middle, and I was like, with the tone of the review, I can't give it any higher. And I wanted to give it higher because I didn't want what happened to happen. Because believe it or not, I actually don't like receiving messages and emails telling me that my family should burn in hell because I gave a game a score that they didn't agree with.
Yeah.
I actually don't enjoy that.
No, not at all.
I mean, if anything, it's gotten boring. It's actually quite boring to read 50 plus comments just saying, "Jim, you are a fat troll." I've heard that for 3 years. It doesn't affect me in any way other than it makes me just feel quite tired. And I was actually really tired that week when I posted that review, and I was like, I don't have the energy for this. But it had to be done. You know, I can't rightfully put up an inflated score that I feel isn't right just because I don't want to deal with some people who seem emotionally invested in my opinion of a game. So I put it out there, and it was a case of come what may. And you know, we all saw what happened, and other blogs wrote about the review, and I got all sorts of messages, and then I met a guy from Ubisoft at a party shortly after.
Oh,
and he was actually really cool. So,
okay.
But then there are some people at Ubisoft I don't think liked it at all. I've seen some tweets from developers in Montreal who don't tell you what company they're from, but I'm pretty sure that a developer in Montreal who tweets "fuck Jim Sterling." I think it's pretty clear we know where he's from, and it's a shame. You know, I don't enjoy kicking the shit out of reviews. Kicking the shit out of games, rather. It's my reviews that have the shit kicked out of them. I don't like dumping on games. I love games. That's why I'm paid to play them, and why I have the job I have, because I love games and I love telling people about good ones. It gives me no real joy to tell you that a game is shit, especially if it's a game people have been looking forward to. I want to be able to tell them this game is brilliant. Go out and buy it. All your hope is justified.
Yeah, with Heavy Rain, you know, when I was playing through it, and then when I was writing my review, I was kind of, it was really my first time where I'm like, I was thinking, man, I'm not gonna give this a really, I gave it a good score, but I was like, I'm not gonna take a total shit on it, where I'm just gonna say it's the worst game ever, but I mean, I just have to kind of hit it at a few spots where no one else is hitting it on. Because the fact is, I can't play a game where, hey, the developer says, tie this other guy's tie, like I'm a fucking wife, where, you know, someone actually said, hey, let's have him tie a tie. I can't, feeding a baby, burping a baby, no, I have to draw a line somewhere where I don't need to go into that reality part. And that's where I had to hit it, but I mean I didn't hit it hard. But it is funny that, you know, I thought I was gonna get torn up on when I gave it an 8.5, but then other people gave it much worse, way worse in some cases.
Yeah, I mean I gave it a 7, which at the time I believe was the lowest score. I'm sure there are lower now.
Yeah.
But that was another one where, I mean, if you upset PS3 fans in particular, they are the worst. Mm-hmm. They are the absolute most rabid and loyal and zealous of the lot. And you know, there's a whole list of the things they've done that justifies that statement. I actually wrote an article called "PS3 Fanboys Are the Worst," and there's a whole history of the things they do, and my own personal experiences with them. So yeah, I mean, there seems to be this unwritten law that if you say that any PS3 game isn't perfect, you will get the shit ripped out of you. Videogamer.com did a review of Killzone 2 back when it was released last year. They gave it an 8.5 and ended up with how many pages was it? 40, that was it, about 40 pages of comments from angry PS3 fanboys because they gave the game an 8.5. I gave Killzone, Heavy Rain rather, a 7, which is a good score. I said it was a good game worth playing, but the story dragged it down, and it was very lucky it was a video game because the gameplay pushed it up. And yeah, they were furious. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I couldn't leave alone and ended up writing some articles, one of which was quite satirical, saying that Deadly Premonition was better than Heavy Rain, and everyone lost their minds over that and weren't amused. Well, I mean, plenty of people were amused, but the PS3 fans were not. But, you know, that's the nature of the job. I'm here to have fun, and it is quite fun to just make these huge sweeping statements and pretend to hate a game. You know, like I said, I get no joy out of genuinely hating a game, but pretending to dump on a popular game, just using ridiculous fanboy logic and turning the logic of fanboys around on themselves it's a peculiar kind of joy.
It's funny that you mentioned like pro wrestling. It's kind of like there's times where you just want to get some heat from the crowd to let them know that they're live. And hey, I've done it on videos and some articles, and you do it with especially you brought up Deadly Premonition, and I gotta talk about this because prior to Deadly Premonition coming out, I saw it was on the release list, and I started asking about it, hoping I could get a copy, and I started looking up a few bits and details, and I'm like, okay, survival horror, and I'm all for survival horror, and didn't get a copy. Had to actually go rent it, and I played it, and it was just, wow, this is really bad. And then I look at your Twitter, and you're just ecstatic about it. You're just nonstop. I love this game. I love every bit of it. I don't want it to end, and blah, blah, blah. And then when I read your review on it, and you give it a 10, I was, wait. I looked over again. Oh, I get it. I get it. It's so bad that it's perfect. So I understood that, but this Deadly Premonition review, it's gotten you boggled my mind with this because you kind of changed the way this whole momentum of this game just by one review. You have seen all that, right? Where it became, for a point, it was better selling than BioShock 2 on Amazon. I mean, you have seen all that. I'm sure that people brought it up to your attention.
Yeah, I mean, I've had plenty of people tell me that they bought the game from my recommendation, and strangers in GameStops apparently have been telling people, I know people, I've seen tweets from people who work in GameStop saying, so yeah, this guy just came in and bought Deadly Premonition, said they read Jim Sterling's review on Destructoid, and I'm like, wow. And that is perhaps the most amazing part of the job, is when you know that a game you love has been bought by somebody else because you were talking about it, and the idea that you can help a game that you really like to sell copies is amazing. Again, absolutely ridiculous that I should have the power to sell even one copy of a game to anybody, but absolutely mind-blowing. And Deadly Premonition, I've never been more proud that I've helped people discover that game. It really is just something else, and a lot of people thought the review was a joke. Some people just said that I'd successfully trolled the internet in the most amazing way possible. Yeah. I can't troll any harder from there. But it wasn't my intention to trick or fool or make a joke about it. The game is perfect at what it does. You have to judge. I mean, I always try and judge games as an overall package, as what they did for me, what they made me feel, and everything. And everything bad about the game just made me enjoy it more. And I mean, yeah, if I was reviewing the game purely from a gameplay perspective, it wouldn't get much at all, because it as a piece of raw gameplay, it doesn't do all that much to recommend itself. I mean, if I was reviewing it just on the graphics, of course it would get 3 or 4 on the scale, because it looks not much better than not better at all than a PS2 game. Mm-hmm. But if I judge it as a piece of entertainment, as something that just made me laugh out loud more times than any other video game, and genuinely made me happy every moment I was playing it, then I can't give it anything but a high score. And a game like Deadly Premonition was so extreme that you could only really give it a 1 or a 10. And I'm not giving a 1 to a game that had the FK in the coffee scene. It's just not happening.
How has that been since the review in regards to when I go to Destructoid? They're mainly smart readers. They come up with some good stuff, and they get a lot of what you're saying. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. A majority of them do, and I'm sure a lot of them bought the game because of your review. Have you seen some fallout because of that, where all of a sudden they're saying, "Hey, this is not a 10 game, and this is more of a crap game"? Have you gotten that yet? Have you seen that?
I haven't, actually. I mean, I've had people who bought the game before reading my review and argued it. 1 or 2 people who didn't get it and had told me this isn't a 10 game. Jim's talking bullshit. But as far as I know, anybody who's bought the game on my recommendation has come back and said, Jim was right about this, which, only makes me beam from ear to ear, because that's just brilliant to hear. And, I was worried when I put the review up. I didn't want people buying the game because I said it was good, discovering it was shit, or, deciding it was shit and then blaming me for it and saying, Jim lied to me or misled me. And I was worried about receiving backlash from people who bought it and didn't see what I saw in it. But so far, everyone's seen exactly what I saw in it, which is just absolutely fantastic.
I said I gotta play this game again so I could see. I could try to get some more into it. There are the parts where it really is like, I love the talking between York and Zach in the car about 80s movies. It brought to mind me in American Psycho, when he would just go on and on about 80s music. And it was like, wow, that reminds me of just like that, the amount of detail he put into it. And I thought that was like an interesting homage to that Psycho over there.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is just full of these absolutely unpredictable moments and brilliant pop cultural references and stuff. I mean, my wife would go out to work, come back, and every time she'd come back, the first thing I'd say, right, today in Deadly Premonition, the following happened. Had a conversation about Kevin Bacon in Tremors, met a rockabilly corner shop owner, and just rattled off the list of bizarre things that had happened to me in Deadly Premonition that day. And yeah, I mean, I can't give a bad score to a game like that just is full of things that you want to tell everyone about. And there's stuff in Deadly Premonition that I've never mentioned because I don't want to spoil it for anyone. But I put up one video of an early scene between York and the elderly woman who owns the hotel. Mm-hmm. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. There is so much in that game that I've never mentioned publicly yet, because I want people to discover it for themselves. And some people have thanked me for that. They're like, oh my god, Jim, how did you keep quiet about this? And then they'll tell me something ridiculous that happened to them.
Talk about the feedback and the backlash. How bad has it gotten? Because I saw that you did one sort of blog back in, I think, 2008, where people were just prank calling the offices and saying Jim Sterling should die and everybody should die and we're gonna burn, blah 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 blah. How bad has it gotten with some of the stuff you've written? What's been some of the worst?
Honestly, it's not been that bad. I mean, I've had problems with some trolls and some people who even ex people in the industry who I've worked with on a personal level will bear me a grudge for some reason and go out of their way to try and... I mean, some people try and ruin my career, and they're people that have borne like real personal grudges, but on the whole it's not been that bad. I think perhaps one of the worst was a guy, he was another writer of a site that didn't really go anywhere, but decided to try and make his career off the back of my own. And he turned his entire site into a site about me, basically, and would post on anything I wrote, and any discrepancy he found in my work, he would report on his site. And then he started stalking my MySpace and when I had one, and then he'd get his friends to message me on Xbox Live, and then if he found out I was going to like a UK event, this was back when I was in the UK and he was UK based too, if I was going to an event based in the UK, he'd start telling me he was going to be there and everything, and he never did show up, because you find out most of these people are pussies, and that's why they go on the internet to act like a tough guy. So really, I mean, the amount of time people I've made angry, and I always, whenever someone recognises me at an event or in a game store or wherever, and they're like, are you Jim Sterling? I do wince, because I don't know whether they're going to shake my hand or punch me in the face. But so far, it's always been pleasant, and I think even people... Even if they don't like me, if they met me, they'd probably pretend to like me, because most people on the internet, I've noticed, aren't really good at carrying out the promises they make. So really, apart from the occasional email that tells me, I'm a fat cunt and my family should burn in hell, that's as bad as it really gets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was trying to get that guy on that hated you, but his website's down, so oh well, fuck him.
Oh well.
Yeah, and you know, and since I met you personally, and I didn't even, I had no idea who you were. And granted, after
That
you met me,
happens a lot.
yeah, and granted, after you met me, you probably still don't know who I was, because that also happens. But I mean, in general, you were just there, and you were just, hey, laid back kind of guy. Just keep it to himself. Talked when we could talk, and when people meet you, it's, I'm sure that those people that hate you, if they met you, they probably wouldn't even realize that they hate you that much. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are some people. Twitter is a very popular place to go and hate Jim Sterling. I do recommend, and I do it. It's kind of shameful, but I do it myself. I will put Jim Sterling into the Twitter search bar just to see what's happening, and the amount of quite vicious comments I sometimes get, and sometimes I can't resist, just for fun, you know, just interacting with them, and quite a few people that have had a go at me, I've actually turned their opinion around, and they've kind of realised that I'm not this egregious asshole who revels in people's hatred and hates everything and is this complete misanthrope. There are people, like, I've been messaged on Facebook, people writing huge missives about what a terrible human being I am, and I'll respond to them. Usually I'll start off being quite caustic and sarcastic to them, and then they get drawn into an argument, and the argument turns into quite a reasonable debate. And yeah, after that, most people who actually bother to try and understand what I do for Destructoid realise that I'm not that terrible a person.
Yeah, your Twitter itself, it's one of the more entertaining Twitters that I follow. Some of them for me are just information, some of them are my buddies. But in your case, it's entertaining to follow. I especially just the other day, you put a reply on there that you said something, and then some random jackass says no one cares, and then you went back, you're following me on Twitter. How are you going to tell me that no one cares? And
yeah, I mean, I've never understood that. I get quite a few people who, like, complain about the things I put on Twitter, and they're clearly people that don't like me in the first place, and for some reason have decided that I'm worth following. And it seems to me like it's almost as if they're coming into my house and then screaming, "Nobody wants to see you in your underwear, Jim." And I'm like, well, that's why I'm in my fucking house.
Exactly.
You know, that's why I'm not outside. And Twitter, you know, it's a personal thing, and I think it's ridiculous. I have about, you know, several thousand people following me, because I don't consider myself that, intriguing. But, you know, they're welcome to do so, and I'm honoured that so many people find me that interesting. But if you don't find me interesting, then don't bother following me. And that extends to Destructoid as well. I tell people all the time that if you don't like me, don't read my stuff. Certainly don't comment on it, because that will just encourage more comments, ergo more page views. And, you know, a writer's dead without his readers. Readers are they're oxygen to a writer. So these people that constantly read and comment and hate my stuff, they're only making sure that I stay in business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, history has proven that if people hate you, they'll tune in more. I mean, I listen to Howard Stern all the time, and back in the day, I mean, when he started taking off, they would say, yeah, the regular fan listens to half an hour. The people that hate you listen to an hour of your show. And that's just the way we're kind of built up, that if we hate something, we want to hear it again and more, and hate on it more. But it's when you do it well, not just really retarded like some of my stuff, but but when you do it well, that's when people hate you and they want to get hate on you, but they won't totally dismiss you. And that's what you do well, and several other people that do well. I mean, that's, you know, freaking Rush Limbaugh and Bill O'Reilly have built their franchise around that. That, yeah, people hate them. People still listen to them because they hate them. They're just not that retarded level where they don't say, okay, you know, I'll just ignore them.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. It's whatever you think of people like that, and like Glenn Beck or Howard Stern, whether you agree with them or not, you have to respect what they do. They've managed to make huge amounts of money and gain a huge following, mostly from people who hate them, and they've managed to turn the hate that people have for them into a business almost. And, you know, I don't like Glenn Beck. I don't like his opinions or anything, but I have to respect that he's able to make a career out of it. You know, he's done really well in managing all that hatred and turning it into something. So from a business perspective, huge respect for the guy. I just don't respect anything else about him. But then that's why I don't tune into him every day or I don't even know when he's on, but whenever he's on, wherever he's on, I don't really pay attention to him, which is what, more people should do for myself. But as you said, we seem to be in this culture where that's never going to happen. And like I say, I've said often to myself, nobody hates a mediocre man. So, it's good that you're being hated and not outright ignored.
I heard Hulk Hogan say this line once, and it kind of really does a lot. He said it that if people are not hating on you, then you're not doing it right. And every time I look at stuff and I look at the people that are popular and I look at the things that everybody is looking at on message boards and other websites, yeah, it's stuff that's generating a lot of hate, but it's popular. They're doing it right.
Yeah, pretty much.
Now,
it seems to be. I mean, if you're successful, people are going to hate you. So it can only really be a compliment if someone cares that much. And I've seen some people go pretty obsessive in just constantly letting me know how much they hate me, and all I could really do is thank them.
Okay, Jim. So one of the big articles, I talked about Assassin's Creed that received a lot of hate, Deadly Premonition review that received a lot of love, but one thing that really again, I mean, controversy just follows you around. One of the other big controversial ones of recent was the talk about indie games. And when I read this, and it was something that I felt kind of back when I played a couple of small indie games, and when he put it, I was like, he hit it right on the nail. And a lot of people have really come down on you hard because of that article where you said that, they don't have to be all artsy. They don't have to be so out there. They don't have to be all sort of, look at me, I'm doing something different than everybody else. Some of them can put a game together and that ends up being still pretty damn good. How did that sort of pop in your head that you need to write about that?
But it's an argument I had for a very long time. I first voiced it back when I was recording an episode of our Destructoid podcast, Podtoid, and Anthony Birch, who many of the listeners will likely know from Hey Ash, What You Playing. He's a huge fan of indie games and art games, and we did an art game episode, and he was like, okay, play the following games, play Passage, play The Marriage, and when I played them, I with their deliberately base graphics and their ridiculously vague direction, I was just like, these games are just acting how they believe they should act because they are art games. And it just stuck with me, this idea that if it's indie, and I'm not saying all developers do this, there are some fantastic indie games out there, but some developers seem to have it in their head that they must be this particular style, this vague, cloudy, deliberately overly obscure experience, and fun doesn't seem to enter into the bargain. And, those games clearly have a place, they have a following, but for me, it's not original. And that was the thing, I think a lot of people misunderstood me when I talked about this. They thought I was having a go at anything that tried to be original. But to me, an art game that acts like The Path, where you're not given any direction and it tries to subvert your expectations by doing the opposite, requiring you to do the opposite of what the game's directions tell you to do. That's not unique to me. You can find games like that, a dime a dozen. You can get any game that will throw in allusions to rape to shock you, or games that have vast tracts where you're just walking from left to right doing nothing, to be quote-unquote introspective. That's not original. It's actually become just as cookie-cutter and creatively bankrupt as your average AAA FPS. They've become a plagiarizing and self-copying entity in the same way that many big budget retail games have. And to me, originality is not derived by how much money has been put into the game's development. And I think some people believe that you can't accuse an indie game or an art game of being derivative, when most of them, I won't say most of them, but most of the popular ones actually are very derivative.
when I was reading that, it popped in my head that, I mean, we have a term for it. We have a term where we call it artsy fartsy, where we call stuff that so artistic and it's just not. It's not fun. It's like with movies. There's great independent movies that are built with zero budget, Clerks and sexualized videotapes, no budget, hardly any actors, and then they're great pieces of work. And then there's other people that have just as little budget, and it's just crap. It's just nothing. But they put it in artistic, and this is my view. But it's still, you don't have to be. You don't have to go to that end just because you don't have a budget. You can make something great. You just have to, not do it in such an artistic way where you can't. Like you said, it's artistic, but it's still unoriginal. It's still it's still just lackluster. It's just lackluster without a budget and something else thrown in to say, oh, look, we're special. I saw all the comments for that, and immediately people would just say, oh, well, he hates indie games, and it's not. And that's where it was kind of a shame, because you put out a good message that I hope a lot of indie developers sort of looked at and just said, hey, we can make a great game and for no budget, but we just gotta be original and try something really special.
Yeah, I mean that to me is the challenge, is to do something that has all your deep meanings and all your self-indulgent prose, but is also entertaining to the average player. To me, that is a true test of skill. Give me a game that is just as quote unquote, important and meaningful as an art game, but also make it as fun as an indie game like Castle Crashers. Mm-hmm. If you combine like genuinely fun gameplay with a genuinely artsy fartsy message, I think you will have created a triumph. But it seems that people get stuck in this mindset that it has to be one or the other. And I think some people thought I was arguing for one instead of the other. My main argument was for both. Like, let's combine them. Let's truly be original here. But then a lot of people missed the point. Funnily enough, most of them were members of the gaming press as opposed to developers. Mm-hmm. I had one indie game developer who emailed me and was like, I loved that article. It was brilliant. It gave voice to a lot of frustration that some developers have. And even Rod Humble, who developed The Marriage, which is one of the games that I tore apart in the article, he defended his game, but he didn't diminish what I had to say. He was actually very cool about it. And I mean, I think Rod Humble as a guy he's a fantastic man. He's very... he's not arrogant and very down to earth and has a great sense of humor, and he's taken my attacks on art games stupendously well. But it was actually people within the games media who were unhappy with what I said. I had an argument with Patrick Klepek from MTV Multiplayer, and Sterling McGarvey tweeted about it, and there were various things on various indie game blogs that basically said Jim Sterling hates art games. And it just struck me as quite amusing, because it seems almost like these guys are feeling threatened. Like if I diminish art games, I'm then saying that them as journalists are not important. And I think there was quite a bit of selfishness with that, where people thought, well, if art games aren't important, then I'm wasting my time writing about them, and I think some people took that personally.
When I started looking at it more, because I saw it was a lot of journalists that, it sort of popped up, a bunch of articles and blogs that were just saying, oh, well, this is this, blah, blah, blah. When I was looking at it, it's that the video games medium, it's still brand new compared to everything else. It's been around at about 40 years. And just now we're sort of getting into the whole, like in movies, where there was a point where everybody was started making their own movie. Now we're getting to where a lot of people can really make their own game, and just like in movies, and also in music, where it's like, oh my God, there's all this non-corporate stuff that's going on, and this is great, and not all of it is, and it takes a while for the medium and the people inside it to just say, okay, this is not great, all this other stuff. We need to just start filtering it and just say, okay, this is indie stuff that's great, this is indie stuff that's crap. As a medium, I think you kind of took that first step where someone said, okay, there's indie games but they're not all great. Like I said, films and music have already gone through that, and this is sort of our time to go through that with video games, where we just say, okay, there's indie games, not all great, but let's start looking at them and let's start treating them like grown-ups. Let's not treat them like kids, where you're the best ever, even though you're doing bad in this. No, we got to treat them as grown-ups. Like, okay, this is bad, but this is good. And you could do better next time. I think that's where we're at. It's just some people don't realize that, and they want to think that this is something that indie games have been around forever, but they haven't. It's a new thing that's just becoming popular, and we need to sort of treat it and nurture it, but we also have to smack it on the butt when it sucks.
Yeah, I think so. I think the big thing holding us back is I certainly perceived this. I perceive that there's a fear among gamers and games writers in particular of diminishing art games and looking unintelligent. I mean, that's evidenced by the articles I wrote on the art games debate. A lot of responses were from people saying, "Oh, you just don't get it," and some of us want a more intelligent form of game. And I think a lot of people are afraid of looking stupid by attacking art games, and they're afraid of not getting it and missing out on something that the intelligentsia are all, falling in love with. And, I just looked at these games and I was like, well, they're not really half as smart as they think they are, and half as smart as everyone else is pretending they are. And, I let it not be said that I am afraid to look stupid. I'm certainly not afraid to look stupid, so, I took the risk, and some people got what I was saying, and some people just assumed I was being stupid, so, there we go. But a lot of people agreed with it as well, so at least I'm not alone in my assumption that some art games can do better.
Yeah, and you're definitely not alone with that, and also you're not alone with the other big article that you wrote, I believe it was last month, about the video game fans need to shut up about everything. Because that one, I mean, that itself, when I read it, I just, when I saw it pop up on Twitter, I'm like, oh, Jim, what are you doing now? And I read it, and it was like, man, this is something that I've been thinking about. It's something I sort of thought about since the Left 4 Dead 2 petition, when that sort of came about, and the fact that Valve was treating these people with respect. These douches were playing the game the day after it came out, and then now with you brought to me the Diablo 3 one. The Diablo 3 petition is, I was just astounded when I saw that. The Sonic 4 one, I was thinking, I'm like, okay, I could see people just getting just going up in arms at that. Granted, the way they did it is stupid, but the Diablo 3 one, I just saw that list and I was like, holy shit, are you fucking kidding me? Who are these people that are making this stuff? What really was was it the Sonic 4 fans that are saying, the Sonic 4 haters that are saying we're not going to buy Sonic 4, we're going to buy other Sonic games instead? Was that really what spurred the whole, that really kicked off this whole article for you?
That was definitely the final straw. I was debating at the time whether to just focus on Sonic and make it a Sonic article, or include, the past several years of my experience with these so-called fans. A lot of whom I don't even want to call them fans, really, because they don't act like they love what they're talking about at all. They only act like they hate everything. And I've been mocking these people for years, back before Fallout 3 was released and when Diablo 3 was announced. Whenever these people would complain and write their little petitions, I'd post about it. And the Valve thing, I made quite a few enemies of the Left 4 Dead boycotters at the time because of the things I was saying. One of the things I said was that I guarantee everyone will be playing it when it comes out, and I was proven right on that. So
sure enough,
yeah. But the Sonic thing kind of pushed me over the edge and was a good, it made it a timely article. So yeah, it was certainly a good one to write, and I didn't expect that one to be as popular as it was, but it seems that a lot of people kind of liked it because it gave voice to something they'd been thinking. So yeah, I just wish people would enjoy video games, because I certainly do. I love them, and yeah, I bitch and moan when something isn't right, but that's only because I want it to be better. And some of these people just don't even seem to want that. They don't want developers to succeed. That seems the worst part of it. They don't care that someone needs to do something to make money so they can keep making games. They just want everything to be about them, their particular tastes, and if it's not exactly what they want, they will throw all their toys out the pram. And it's like, I've got a stepkid. I deal with that already. I deal with, children can be, they can be bratty. They can throw a tantrum if they don't get what they want. And when I come to Destructoid to do my job, I don't want to deal with it there as well. From people who are worse, at least a kid will show some gratitude now and then. But these guys won't even go that far.
It always, because I heard you on Side Scrollers and you brought up the whole article. It is a kind of a big mystery on how this occurs, because you brought up, how these are fans supposedly saying how they're going to hate Sonic. And then it brought to me that, like I mentioned, I listened to Howard Stern, I listened to Opening Anthony, and these guys, they have hardcore fans that sort of do the same thing. Oh, you suck now, you used to be better 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And then they say, well, no, we sucked back then, we're better now, it's just you haven't changed. There's something about change that doesn't work well with some people, and I think that's kind of the key behind it. And they're just kind of stuck in the past, and they don't. I don't know if it's a matter of they're stuck in the past and that they're afraid of change, or if they're stuck in the past and that they try to change, like especially with the Sonic series. Oh, well, let's, get in Sonic Adventure. Oh, well, let's get in Sonic Unleashed. Oh, shit, I don't know if it's a matter of that if it's scared, or if that they tried it and they didn't like it, and now they just want to avoid it at all costs. So it's hard to say, and it really just boggles my mind on how this happened. But it happens to pretty much everything.
Yeah, it happens with Destructoid as well. Destructoid has gone through some pretty big changes for the past year and a half. We've gotten bigger. We've gotten the community has grown to staggering degrees. And when we first started, we had a small but dedicated community, and it was like a little clubhouse. But you can't do that as you grow. You have to try and spread the love out, and you can't appeal to just one little clique anymore. And that one little clique got upset with Destructoid, and we got all the whole "you've sold out, you've changed, you used to be cool," all this stuff, and it's all about the money, and they don't realise that sometimes it does have to be about the money. You've got to. If we didn't at least try and make part of what we do about the money, Destructoid wouldn't exist anymore, because we wouldn't be able to afford to keep the thing running, and provide you with free entertainment. And a lot of people don't get that. I think a lot of people just don't understand business. They don't. It's hard to for some people, because they spend all their time on the internet and they don't interact with the real world, and they just don't get the reality of the situation. And that's the same with Destructoid, with video games, is sometimes business has to happen, and sometimes business is bad. Just look at the way Activision treats its customers. That when you're actively harming customers, that it is bad. But if you're just trying to make the money you need to stay in business, then you have to understand that some things need to happen and some changes need to be made. We constantly evolve. Society's always evolving. Media is always evolving, and so things are gonna have to keep evolving with it. And that's the same with Sonic. Sonic can't be a 16-bit game forever. Not if it wants to appeal to everybody. So they had to meet us halfway. They used a newer design for Sonic with, yes, longer legs and a bit of green on his eyes. But, that's what a lot of the kids nowadays are used to. And it's not exactly like it's going to affect the gameplay very much. So the old fans who they're appealing to still get the proper Sonic gameplay. It doesn't really matter that he looks a bit more appealing to the younger crowd. It's a compromise. And I think a lot of people they never want to compromise. They want everything to be about them. And it's a very selfish thing. Most people, it's natural to feel entitled. They want everything to be their way, but some people handle it worse than others, and if they don't get it exactly to their taste, they will just, have an episode and go mental.
Because then also if they get it again and again and again, then it's just, oh, you're using the same thing over, think of something new. And,
yeah. You can never please everybody, ever.
But I think it's safe to say that you really did hit it on the head, because there's just small vocal minority that does these petitions that are just fucking idiots. and but they cause a stir, but again, like the Left 4 Dead 2, that just really, every time I was looking up information and I was seeing this petition and all this stuff going left and right, and I just really got sickened when hey, Valve flew one of the people in. Why would you do that? Who cares? This is probably like 30 people on a message board that are doing this. No one really cares. They just signed a petition over and over again under different names. They don't care. The other people, everybody else is going to be fine. It's just a small group, and when you cater to them and you think and you treat them like they're, that they are doing something that they're really affecting things just because they're making this little petition, then you get in the mind of other jackasses to say, oh, well, we can do a petition too because we don't think, well, like the Sonic one, we don't think Sonic's that great, so let's do our petition. And it's just, you're just giving them the little ego boost to say that we could change things because we're a vocal minority when they don't need to be changed, and they're not changing anything.
Well, I mean, here's the thing with what Valve did. I actually think what Valve did was a smart move. Because, first of all, the whole Left 4 Dead boycott incident just gave Left 4 Dead 2 more promotion than Valve could hope for. This was free advertising. It generated a huge stir among all the blogs, and a lot of people covered it. I covered it hugely because the whole thing entertained me a lot. So they'd already gotten free promotion out of these whiners who were trying to undermine its business, but only served to make it better, as most boycotters only end up doing. When Valve flew those guys out, it was very clear what they were doing. First of all, it was yet more publicity. Mm-hmm. All it did was cost them a couple of plane tickets, and all the blogs were on fire about it. They were like, Valve fly out boycotters, headline. Yeah. And that was good advertising on their part. It also helped to divide the boycotters because once those two boycott leaders went back and were like, oh, well, we've played the game now and now we think it's good, then that just started arguments among the boycotters, and it was a whole divide and conquer strategy. Mm-hmm. And yeah, maybe Valve didn't need to do it, but it was tremendous fun to see it in action.
Yeah, it was. It still was. Just like a lot of other articles, there's it's like in opinions in general. It reminds me of it kind of reminds me of the Libertarian Party, in that a lot of people could be libertarian if they just realize that what if someone provided a message better. You provide that message that a majority of gamers think that that yes, games are great. There's some problems here or there. There's this group that needs to shut up. There's this that we need to look at. There's this we need to focus on. You provide that voice, and that's why it's kind of refreshing, because it's that voice that a lot of most people really are thinking, and they're not being drowned out by the fanboys and just the general schmucks online that are making a big fuss over nothing or anything. That's why I really enjoy reading your articles, and I'm sure that's why everybody does.
Thank you. It's only really possible because of how what a cool workplace Destructoid is. Mm-hmm. I've often said that if I was working anywhere else, I'd be fired within a week. But Nick and Nero have always been really cool about letting me just say what I want, and so long as I know I've got their backing, I don't really care about the kind of drama that's caused when I share an opinion. I'm trusted to say what I believe and stick by that. So yeah, so long as Nero's still happy with me just being myself on his site, then I'm happy to keep doing it.
Excellent. Well, we've been going on for a while, but I want to thank you, James Sterling from Destructoid.com. Thank you for being on the podcast, joining me. For everybody that is still listening, I should have more interviews or just me and the guys just fucking around. So everybody else, stay tuned.